The city lights shimmered like distant stars as midnight settled over the skyline, painting everything in silver and shadow. Adrian Cole sat alone in the backseat of his silent car, staring out the window, watching the world blur by. He should have been celebrating tonight. Another award, another headline, another reminder that he was the youngest billionaire in the country. Cameras flashed, investors applauded, speeches praised him. But none of it reached him. His heart felt quieter than the empty streets. Something in him whispered that success without meaning was only noise. As the car slowed at a red light, Adrian leaned forward, breathing in the stillness. Then, faintly, he heard something, a sound so soft he almost thought he imagined it. A small voice humming. He looked out the window again, and there, beneath a flickering street lamp, he saw a little girl curled up beside a closed bakery door. She looked no older than 7 or 8, wrapped in thin blankets, trying to stay warm. Her shoes were worn, her hair tangled, and yet she hummed with a gentleness that broke the silence around her. Adrian felt something shift in his chest. Most nights he would have looked away, convincing himself someone else would help, someone else would care. But tonight was different. He opened the car door before the driver could react, stepping into the cool air. The girl startled, her humming stopping mid-note. Her eyes met his, wide, uncertain, but impossibly calm, as if she already knew him somehow. Adrian felt breathless, though he didn't know why. Something about her face tugged at a memory buried deep inside him, something tender and forgotten. He took a step closer, unsure of what he was feeling or why his heart was racing, only knowing one thing for certain. This moment was the beginning of something he could not yet understand. The driver called after him, confused, but Adrian barely heard a word. All his attention was fixed on the girl beneath the street lamp. She watched him carefully, clutching a small backpack to her chest as if it were treasure. Adrian didn't want to frighten her, so he knelt beside the steps, giving her space. "It's cold tonight," he said gently, trying to keep his voice steady. "Have you eaten?" The girl hesitated. Her lips parted, unsure whether she should speak or stay silent. Then, with a tiny shake of her head, she whispered, "Not today." The words hit him harder than anything said to him in a boardroom. Without thinking, he stood and walked to the car. The driver opened the trunk, confused but obedient. Adrian reached inside and pulled out a fresh wool blanket he had just received as a gift earlier that evening, something he hadn't even unwrapped yet. He returned to the girl and slowly unfolded it, spreading it around her shoulders. She stared at the blanket, surprised by the softness, and a faint smile appeared, small, hesitant, but beautiful. Adrian felt warmth rise in his chest, a feeling he couldn't name. He noticed something else then, the corner of a small photograph peeking from her backpack. A picture wrinkled and faded. The girl saw him looking and quickly tucked it deeper inside, gripping the zipper with sudden protectiveness. That simple motion made something flutter in Adrian's mind. He remembered a photograph he once carried everywhere, 2 adults and a little girl smiling between them, a moment frozen before life changed forever. He pushed the memory away, afraid to feel it. "Do you have someone you can go home to?" he asked quietly. The girl shook her head again, more slowly this time. "I used to," she said. "But now I just stay wherever I can." Night wind brushed past them, carrying the scent of rain, and for the first time in years Adrian felt the urge to stay in one place, to not rush forward into the next meeting or plan. Something about her eyes, soft yet strong, anchored him. She wasn't just any child. She felt familiar, even though logic insisted he had never seen her before. And still, a strange feeling pulled at him, a sense that helping her would change everything. The girl finished sipping the warm drink Adrian had bought from a nearby cafe, cradling the cup with both hands as if it were the most precious thing she'd ever held. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice steadier now. "My name is Clara." Adrian repeated it in his mind, "Clara." It felt soft, hopeful, familiar in a way that unsettled him. She looked at him with wide, earnest eyes, still partly guarded but no longer afraid. Wanting to help but not overwhelm her, he asked simple questions: where she usually slept, how long she had been alone, if anyone had been looking after her. Her answers were quiet and scattered, pieces of a life too harsh for someone so young. "I walk during the day. At night I find warm places," she said, shrugging as if it were ordinary. Adrian glanced at the sky. The rain clouds were returning, heavy and dark. He knew he couldn't leave her on the street. "There's a shelter a few blocks away," he offered gently. "They'll have food, a bed, lights. Would you let me take you there?" Clara hesitated, hugging her backpack tighter. "People leave," she whispered. "I don't want to go somewhere and then be left again." Her words felt like a hand around Adrian's heart. He understood abandonment more than anyone realized. His parents had passed away when he was young. Clara's fear mirrored his own from years ago, silent, deep, impossible to say out loud. Trying to ease her worry, he smiled softly. "I'm not leaving. Not tonight." Still unsure, Clara looked down, tracing her finger along the cup's rim. Then she opened her backpack and carefully pulled out the photograph he had noticed earlier. She studied it for a moment before offering it to him with trembling fingers. "This is all I have," she said. Adrian took the photo gently, expecting a simple family picture. But when he looked at it, the world seemed to stop. His breath caught in his throat. The worn image showed a man and woman holding a toddler. The man's face was unmistakably his own, younger, smiling, full of joy he had forgotten he once felt. For a moment he couldn't speak, couldn't move. Clara looked up anxiously. "Do you know them?" she asked. Adrian's pulse raced, 1,000 thoughts clashing inside him. He didn't know how to answer, not yet, but one thing was certain. This moment was about to change both their lives forever. Adrian stared at the faded photograph, hardly believing what he was seeing. His younger self smiled back at him from a time when life had felt bright and whole. The woman beside him was Emma, his college love, the one who vanished from his world so abruptly 8 years ago. And the child in her arms, no more than a year old in the picture, looked almost exactly like Clara. His hands trembled slightly as he held the photo, but he forced himself to breathe, to remain calm for her sake. Clara watched him closely, searching his face for answers she didn't yet understand. "I don't remember them," she whispered. "But I look at this picture every night. I feel like I'm supposed to." Her voice wavered, fragile but brave. Adrian returned the photo gently. "Where did you get this?" he asked softly. Clara hesitated, eyes drifting toward the street. "A woman left it with me before she disappeared. She told me, one day it would help me find where I belong." His world tilted. Emma had disappeared without leaving a note, not even a goodbye. For years he tried to find her, but every trail ended in silence. He had convinced himself she wanted a different life, one without him. But now, looking at Clara, that explanation felt painfully incomplete. The rain began again, falling in soft sheets around them. People hurried past, umbrellas bobbing through the night, unaware that everything in Adrian's life had just shifted. He glanced at the shelter sign glowing in the distance. He needed to get Clara somewhere warm, somewhere safe, somewhere quieter than the storm building inside him. "Clara," he said, choosing his words carefully, "if you'll let me, I'd like to help you learn more about this picture. About the people in it." She hugged her backpack, eyes bright with cautious hope. "You think you know something?" she asked. Adrian nodded, though he wasn't sure how much truth he could give her yet. "Maybe more than you realize." As they walked through the rain toward the shelter, his mind raced. There were possibilities he had never imagined. Questions he wasn't sure he was ready to face. There was a reason Clara felt familiar. A reason the photograph had found its way to her. And as they pushed open the shelter doors, Adrian sensed that the truth, whatever it was, would change not only Clara's future but his own. The mystery had only begun to unravel. The shelter was warm, softly lit, and filled with quiet voices and the gentle clatter of dishes being washed. Clara looked around cautiously, unsure whether she belonged in a place so calm. Adrian guided her to a small table near the window, where she could see the rain streaking down the glass. A volunteer brought soup and bread, and Clara began to eat slowly, watching Adrian between bites as if afraid he might vanish if she blinked. Adrian's mind was racing. His phone buzzed nonstop in his pocket. Meetings rescheduled, investors waiting, questions piling up, but none of it mattered now. He silenced the phone and focused entirely on Clara, trying to read the pieces of her story scattered across her face. "Do you remember anything about the woman who gave you that photo?" he asked gently. Clara thought for a long moment. "She had kind eyes," she said softly. "Sometimes she called me her little star. She said she would always find me." Adrian felt a sharp ache in his chest. Emma used to say the same words. The thought made his heart shake. Clara continued quietly, "One night she told me she had to go somewhere safe. She said she would be back soon, but she didn't come back." Her voice wavered, but she took a deep breath, fighting to stay steady. "I waited. 4 days. Then weeks. Then months. I kept every place we stayed clean. I kept the picture safe. I tried to be brave." Adrian swallowed hard, overwhelmed by her strength. "You did more than brave," he said. "You survived." She looked up at him with wide eyes, hearing in his voice something she couldn't name. At that moment, one of the shelter workers approached and gently placed a hand on Adrian's shoulder. "Sir, visiting hours are ending soon," she said kindly. Adrian nodded, standing, unsure how to walk away. Clara quickly stood as well, clutching his sleeve, fear rising in her eyes. "You're coming back, right?" she asked. The vulnerability in her voice pierced him. Adrian knelt to her level. "I will be here tomorrow. I promise." Her shoulders relaxed, though uncertainty still lingered. As he turned to leave, Clara held out the photograph again. "Take it," she insisted. "I think it belongs with you tonight." Adrian hesitated, then accepted it. The moment he stepped outside, the cool air rushed around him, and he finally let the truth wash through him. The timing. The face. The photo. The voice on the wind calling someone a little star. It couldn't be coincidence. It had to mean something deeper, something astonishing. Clara wasn't just a child who needed help. She might be a missing piece of his past, and every instinct in him whispered that tomorrow would reveal exactly how. Morning sunlight spilled across Adrian's penthouse, warm and golden, but he barely noticed. He sat on the edge of his sofa, holding the photograph Clara had given him the night before, tracing the edges with trembling fingers. The more he stared at it, the more his heart thudded with certainty. He remembered the moment that picture was taken. A quiet afternoon in a small park, Emma's laughter filling the air, sunlight caught in her hair, and their little girl babbling happily between them. Their daughter. A child he believed he had lost forever when Emma disappeared without explanation. He had spent years trying to bury the memory, convincing himself that some things simply slipped beyond reach. But now, everything felt alive again. He rose suddenly, unable to sit still, grabbed his keys and headed for the shelter. His chest buzzed with electricity, fear and hope tangled together. When he arrived, he found Clara sitting alone at a table, staring out the window as though searching for something beyond the glass. The moment she saw him, she stood up, her face lighting with relief and excitement. "I knew you'd come," she said. Adrian smiled, though his pulse hammered. He sat beside her, and for a long moment neither spoke. "Clara," he began softly, "I think I know who you are." Her breath caught, eyes widening. "Who?" Before he could answer, the shelter door opened and a woman stepped inside, someone the workers greeted with startled joy. Clara gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Emma?" Adrian's world tilted. Emma stood frozen, staring at Clara with tears welling in her eyes. Then she looked at Adrian, disbelief and aching tenderness etched across her face. She moved forward slowly as if afraid the moment might dissolve. Clara rushed into her arms, clinging tightly, whispering her name over and over. Adrian watched, overwhelmed, until Emma turned to him. "I thought I could keep her safe by disappearing," she confessed through tears. "I was afraid. I didn't know how to come back." Adrian felt something inside him soften, long-buried pain melting into something hopeful. Clara took both their hands, pulling them close, her eyes shining. "I knew we belonged together," she whispered. The three of them stood there, a circle finally closed, hearts stitched back to life. Adrian exhaled slowly, feeling the weight lift from his chest, not because he was suddenly complete, but because he had found something far more important than success. He found connection. He found love. He found family again. And as they stepped into the morning light, Clara holding their hands, Adrian knew this was only the beginning of a new story, one filled with healing, purpose, and a future they would build together.